Welcome to the 2022 Training for Charge Conference Forums. I'm Blake Bradford. I'm here with our district administrator, Becky Neighbors. We are teammates here in the Northwest District. Big shout out to my Northwest District friends. But we also have folks from around the Arkansas Conference here for this training because it is one set of forums and it's easier just to do one training for all of us. So I do encourage you during this is being recorded for posterity. So if you want to have your video muted and you want to silence and mute your audio, you can do that. And then if you have a question, just unmute yourself. If you're on the phone, I suggest the same thing. You can mute and unmute on your phone if your phone does that. And if you are on the phone, you may want to have your documents, your charge conference documents open. And we're going to start at the first and work to the end. And that's just how we're going to handle this. And feel free to ask questions along the way. Please be mindful. If it's really specific to your church, you probably want to ask your district superintendent or your district administrator, because if it's real specific, we might have to kind of unwind that. If it's more general questions, we can handle that here in this space. And that's a good way to respect everybody's time. But if you have a question about this, how to do some of this, if it's on your mind, it's probably on someone else's. So feel free to ask those questions. Again, I'm prone to just mow through material. So Becky's going to help remind me to pause every once in a while. And then also when I get something wrong, and I will get something wrong in this kind of session, Becky will correct me and tell me what the real answer is. So let me share my screen here. And this is the charge conference forums for this year. And I don't know how many of y'all have done these before. Some of you, this may be old hat. Oh yeah, I know what I'm doing. Some of you may be saying, wow, that's a lot of pages. Some of you might be in your first year in ministry and the DS did not tell you that these kind of forms were required. And now you're wondering what you got yourself into. But no matter which one of those places you're from, please know that we on all of the district staffs, we're here to assist you in doing this work. This is work that's not only submitted to us, this is part of the historical record of your church. If you go in your files at your church, I bet some of you may have them going back decades of charge conference reports. And it comes in really useful. Who's a member? Who is your insurance company? That came up recently with Boy Scout stuff. Who's your insurance company? All that is really important information to keep track of. So let me just jump right on in. And I want to start on this first part with the instructions. Please note the due date there in red. It is October 17th. We are going to have a Zoom district-wide charge conference on Thursday the 17th. And we're handling that all through a covering motion. And that's how we're going to handle our business, through the consent calendar. But that's how we're going to handle material. So everything must be handled first at your board level before it comes to the church conference. So here's the thing, charge conference. Now, here's the thing. This is the first mistake I made when I took the test copies. And Becky's laughing because she knows what I'm going to say. We have a testing system, and the wonderful folks at that year, technology kind of did some of it and handed it to us a few years ago. And I said, I can't get it to work for me. I was using an Apple computer. I had onboard system, and I fill in the stuff, and the numbers don't add. And then, of course, someone said, did you do the directions? I went, of course I did. And of course, that means I never read the instructions. So right here in the instructions, you must use Adobe Acrobat or a reader, and it's a free download. And if you don't do that, all the things where adds up numbers won't work. Like your onboard, if you use a Mac like I do, and if you just put in numbers, they won't save right, it won't work. You have to use this Adobe software. So that's number one. Actually read the instructions. I'm bad about that, but I learned my lesson. Notice there's some other instructions about how to use some of the tools. Notice also some things need to be reviewed, signed, and dated annually by the chair and the pastor. So these are all things to remember and note as you're preparing. And you make it a packet and distribute it out. have a board meeting, and that considers the whole packet. So your staff parish may be doing one document, and your trustee and your finance, you need to put all that together after it's all been decided by the different committees. And then your board, your church council, your ad board has to vote and approve and send the packet. All these instructions really matter. So my suggestion is read them all before you start divvying up your packet to your chairs. The next page here is the board recommendation for charge conference. This is required and expected because we are doing a district-wide charge conference. We really have to have your governing board approve all the material first. We cannot have just like a staff parish committee do the salary and all that for the pastor and it never be seen by another team, and it shows up at a conference, a district-wide charge conferences. Your board's gonna have to look through it, and we have these minutes set up so the recording secretary can initial along the way as things are approved at your board meeting and check off stuff, and then print and sign. The recording secretary signs it all, and that is make sure that we have evidence and proof that all this work was done at a duly called board meeting. Now, here's the other thing I'm going to say about this. We actually do need you to have this meeting. You don't need to have a signing party where everyone comes in, signs the documents, you just put them in the mail and send them to us. You actually have to have a board meeting. This document is your official minutes. If something were to go haywire and you did not actually have that board meeting, you just said you did, we'd have a real legal problem because some of this stuff has legal consequences. So don't get yourself stuck in that. Make sure you follow the rules. This next document is your charge conference packet checklist. This is something the DA's created and added to the packet to help y'all out, because I know, yeah, there's a list here in this one for the board, but really, frankly, I know it's a lot of pieces of paper and there's attachments and stuff that have to be added. This document here with the little check marks is for in-house use only. It's for you and your church team to have. You can have all the pieces of your packet out and just mark, okay, do I have all the pieces before I scan and send to the district office or however you're getting to the district office? Do we have all the pieces and all the attachments that are required? And this means that you can have this little checklist just for you all in-house to use, just to make sure you have all the random pieces that you're gathering together in your packet. You notice, please, again, that there's different forms here. Now, some of these, like if you don't have a ministry candidate, you don't need to do that form. You just skip it, file 13 it and just mark it out. That's not something y'all did. You will, however, notice you add some stuff that's required, things like the entrance declarations page, the updated local church leadership list that
let me
add your database. Yes, Becky.
On that one, that will come to you separately. That is something we have to pull out of our database, save it as a PDF, and then it is sent to each individual church with their current leadership listed. And we don't have an example to show you today, but that was these were all mailed out July 5th, along with the links for the charge conference packets. This document is what the district offices across the state use to enter your leadership. So if your nominations and your local church leadership forms don't match, the leadership form is what we're using to key that from. So that's just a heads up. Yeah. You can correct that one. We prefer you mark it out with red, write your new people in. But if you're using an Adobe package where you do it and type in the names, then please, if you don't mind, use red just to get our attention so that we don't miss anything on that.
Yeah, and that's if it may just be a phone number change or an email change. That's please put all that in, because we depend on that to send messages out. And when we don't get them, it makes it really hard to get folks the information they need. Local church financial policy here, safe gatherings policy, that if your church happens to use account reimbursement, all that are pieces that are available to be added in. But that has to come from your church. We don't have we get samples different places, but really it's designed for you all to bring, to create, and to add into the packet. And these are things that have to be approved every year. One of the questions is asking the documents be signed electronically. Yes, they can. Some churches have electronic signing systems, and that's fine. Some people have signature drop-ins. That's fine. But the one thing I'll say is don't mess around with people's signatures. You know, make sure you have authorization. I have actually in the past received salary compensation forms when everyone signed it was an email, personal email, and we had to do like 4 pages added in for a comp form just because we were kind of late on getting it signed. Yeah, we can do it. We're flexible. It's just that we do need to have authorization from every individual that it is their true intent. Another question asked is, do you want all the forms to order the checklist? Becky, you tell me, what order do you want these things in?
Well, on the checklist, we want the report as it was sent to you in that order. But if you do not have a retired clergy report to submit, and if you don't have a ministry candidate, you don't have to submit that blank form if you don't want to.
Sure, got it. Thank you. And some of our things are signature pages, if you notice, and that just you can have the signature page and just add the form underneath, like the finance policy or something. So. Thank you. That's helpful. And yeah, and y'all keep on using the chat window. That's real helpful. Thank you. The next page is the pastor's membership report. These are set up to add correctly. And notice there's membership. And if you please note here, if there's a membership audit, please note any changes. So just for instance, I served a church when we did a membership audit, and we found out, for example, one person was in the role 3 times. I don't know why, it just sort of happened. So we had to put the revised audited number in A, but because it didn't match last year's, we need to add a sheet of paper explaining why A is different than last year, because it's like, if not, there's a discrepancy. So we fixed it by saying, hey, there was duplicates. We did a membership audit, there were duplicate names. So we fixed that, and that's how we fixed it.
And so please supply the name.
Yes. Thank you. Yeah, just have a report there that explains what you did. There's new members here, new professions of faith, transfer. Now, notice this for new members, we're talking about professing members. You don't include baptized members, the numerical count of professing members. Remember, we have, there's 2 membership types in the United Methodist Church. So we're talking professing members. That's kind of confirmation and up. And then removed by membership in different ways, you enter that information in. And notice, please include the name and date of death. That's part of the expectation. Now for removing names, but notice this by action of the charge conference. This is E and F right here. So notice this line 4 is the number of names in F, because it takes 2 years. So what happens is, you have your charge conference and you go, okay, you turned it in, you go, man, we really got to do an audit. So you spend the next year. So you'll be starting, like charge conferences in November. You're starting November, December, and working all through the year to get a set of names. So you're calling people, you're sending letters, whatever. You file for 1 year the names of persons for next year's removal. That's the first reading. And in your board, you need to read all the names. Start at the A's and go to the Z's, or however you're doing it. First year reading. Then you spend that next year, that second year, continuing to try to contact people. And then that can be the people names of being recommended for removal at this charge conference. So you'll vote again. And then after they've been voted a second time, they can be removed. Note the discipline requires these names to be considered individually. So one name at a time, and vote on them one name at a time in your board meeting, that you're voting on this membership report to be properly before the charge conference.
Blake, I'm going to add something on the membership report.
Yes.
Under the DES, we again, I refer to our database. All of your church leaders are entered into our database, And one of the ways that we help to keep it up to date is when you do submit a death on your reports, we enter that death date into our system so that we can keep our database up to date. And it's also a moment of reflection for the people you lost during the year. So
you bet. Thank you. Pastor's compensation form. Okay. It's my fault, partly, mostly. We can't stop messing with this. Okay. If you remember last year, we moved the effective date to make it, we're trying to get our effective dates to line up with the conference year. The reasons are it's the conference year and that's the appointment year, but also there's some disciplinary requirements around salary that we need to get really clear on. And so the effective date for compensation is July 1 through June 30th. If you're still doing January, all I can ask you, please get it moved. It's just time to get it moved and make it the effective date of July 1. There's another way to do it. You can, file multiple comp forms. Y'all don't really want to do that. Let's get things moved the way it needs to, and that is according to the appointed year. And so here's the effective. Now, I'm going to scroll real quick here. There is instructions for the comp form on the second page. And a lot of folks think, oh, I don't need that. You need it. There are really helpful instructions around what all these mean. So please have that information handy as you fill it out. So on the comp form, first of all, full-time or part-time, and notice here's your current and here's your new. And on that, we move some stuff around to make sort of the cash stuff up here at the top. That's the actual comp. That's the stuff that, we're trying to show what shows up on like a W-2. And then there's the housing, which would show up on W-2 as well if you have a housing allowance. But anyway, so the top part is more the money side. The bottom part is the benefits section. And they're separate. Notice you're getting a total here in line 11. That line 11 is your total comp that is used. And then it's total comp plus housing is how we kind of figure appointments. And you notice there's a housing piece here. And then you have the accountable reimbursement plan. Not every church does it. Some churches do it. It's optional. But accountable reimbursement is not really a part of the compensation. And I mean that in the form of this is let me put it the best way. That's a tax issue. There's an IRS issue around accountable reimbursements. So they're not considered part of the comp. It's not really considered, it's separate. And it's really about a budget and for reimbursement to do mileage out of or other things. And there's a lot more explanation I could do for it, but just understand it is separate. And then there's any other benefits. We have a few churches around the conference that have group health insurance provided by the local church. And if that's so, they put that in, and we actually have to find more info. And then there's vacation weeks. So there's information there. Now, I see some questions about this. One, if each church is part-time, but the pastor's full-time, what do you check? You check full-time. We're talking about the appointment on this. So then the pastor may have maybe 2-3 different comp forms, one for each congregation, but they are a full-time pastor, so they need to be marked full-time. And that has to, remember, we do pension for full-time. So you need to mark that full-time category because that's the type of appointment it is in total. Another question, yeah. So there we go. So that's the comp form. Now I'm going to stop at the comp form because this is the one that causes the most heartache and it's the most complicated. Is there any particular other questions about the comp form? I see the form you're showing is different than what was emailed. I pulled this off our conference website, so it should be the one. Now, remember, this is one that's effective next July. So it's going to be different than the one used this spring for July 1 this year. This is next year's comp form.
Like you did to speak to the minimum, right?
Oh, yeah.
Minimum
so
salary.
If a pastor is full-time, see this line 11, total cash compensation right here. I have on the back of the instructions, minimum comp for full-time. Line 11 must have these numbers depending on the category of pastor. Line 11 must have, it must equal that as a minimum. And so, you know, that's your add up here. Account reimbursement's not included in that, and housing's not included in that. Line 11 has to total those minimums. Okay, we also have some instructions about, you know, for pension and all that. When filling out the right side of the form, we only fill in the current year, not the new year. You need to be filling out both. What your current, you know, what your current is and what your new is, just put them right next to each other. Yeah. So fill out both columns. Okay. I'm not seeing any other questions about this. If you have any others, you can speak up. And if there's more at the end, we can always come back. The declaration of candidacy, if you have a candidate in your church, you'll need to do them do the approval every year. So for continuing candidates or new candidates, just follow the instructions there. This needs to be filed every year by the church. Let's see. I will come back to some of those questions. I see several questions about comp form. I will come back to the comp form. Nominations. Okay. There's a multiple page nominations form, and we separated out a few years ago. The first page is all about the election of the lay member and the alternate lay member to annual conference. That's all it is. It's just that. We left spaces, but depending, and you may have multiple clergy, and that's fine, but most churches or charges will just have a lay member and an alternate, and we'll need that information. My suggestion is, if you think, oh, we won't need an alternate, I know so-and-so's going. Well, you know, not if they have COVID diagnosis the week before. And if that happens, they can't go. And guess what? Then you either have to have a called charge conference to elect another person, or you don't send anybody. So please include an alternate. Please, please, please. And please ask the people if they can actually go. Yes, Becky.
We even had a couple of churches this past year because of COVID. They went ahead and elected 2 to 3 alternates, one being the main alternate, and then the others were, you know,
like numbered. Yeah.
So that they did not have to have a charge conference close to time for annual conference.
All right. Well, hey, that's fine. That's fine. I'm going to keep on going. Now, the next nominations page is, okay, what governance type do you have? Do you use traditional structure with the committees, or do you use a simplified accountable structure for governance with a single board? As y'all know, I love simplified structure board stuff. Wrote a book on it, enjoy it. It's not right for every church, but it's right for many churches. And I'm happy, and I know all the superintendents are happy to assist you if you want to switch over. And that's just it. Notice this, the DS is required to approve to switch over. So don't just do it thinking, oh, I'm sure it'll be approved. Well, maybe. But we both are allowed, but you need to, if you're doing this simplified, you need to make sure you're doing it right. Next week, I've got a follow-up on just how to fill out the nominations and how to structure one of these boards and do it correctly. So that's next week's meeting. I won't dive too deep into it, but please know there's a lot of expectations to pull this off correctly, and you're going to need help getting there, just because it's complex to go simple. Go figure. So this you choose that, and we actually, in our database, we click which type of structure you have. And we included 2 versions of the nominations report, a traditional structure and a simplified structure nominations page. Now, you need to complete either the form, but you can also submit your own nominations list. If you submit your own nominations list, because maybe you have a 20-person finance committee, that's fine. Make sure that anything you submit has all the same information at a minimum to the form that you're referring to. In other words, you can't just send a simple list and say it's traditional structure, and then the list you provide doesn't have the, you know, the contact information or the classes or something like that. We will send it back to you and say, nope, it doesn't fit the legal requirements. You're going to have to go again. We have about 50 churches using simplified structure in my district, and I sent back 25 of them last year. So just saying, let's get it right the first time and let's include all the information. So either one of these you can use, but please note these are the minimum expectations that you have this information included in whatever you submit. If you do the simplified, I try to make it as simple as possible to actually fill it out, and we'll get more detail in that in the next meeting. The main thing to know when you fill this out is every one of these blanks that you see here, like on the board, either here or like on the council, is a different name. You cannot put John Smith, and John Smith. No, it has to be different names and classes. The class here of each year is the December 31st, 2023, December 31st, 2024, whenever they rotate off. And so you can't have the same name on 3 different classes of the same committee. I have a question here. Can the same person serve on several committees? Yes, they can. They can serve on several committees, and that's fine. The main thing is, nomination needs to be kind of kept separate there. The one thing I'll say, if you have a structure where you're having people serving on the same committee, on different committees and multiple roles, that's probably a good reason to start talking about going to simplified structure, because you're sort of doing it, but not really already, and it's just kind of confusing you right now. So my suggestion is, if you find yourself having people repeat themselves, start looking and studying about this other model. Any other questions on this or anything I'm missing, friends? Becky, anything on that?
I don't think on that.
Okay. So we got the officers here, include all that in, and we really need to know that, because as a superintendent, these officers are the people I call when I have a question. If it's about staff parish, that's the person that was elected to get my phone call, or the person that if people send me emails, I say, well, you need to talk to your staff parish chair. I give them your name that's written there. You've been elected to fill that job. So make sure you get all that filled out. Pastor's written report. Each clergy person should write a report, and it's usually about the ministries of the church. This is part of the historical record. I love going back and seeing through history, kind of the priorities of churches through the years. We also use it for things like in the District Committee on Ordained Ministry, as we interview local pastors. We have this sheet in front of us, so we can help talk about your ministry and what you're doing. So that it's used in several ways.
And we ask for one for the associate pastors and deacons as well.
Yeah. Everyone appointed needs to do one of those. Now, trustee report.
And I'm gonna say something right here.
Right.
First of all, where it says church, if you are a First United Methodist Church, please put the town you are in. If you are FUMC Russellville or FUMC Rogers, some of these reports we break them down and use them in different areas. And when you just have your church, First United Methodist, we have to play a little detective game later when we realize you didn't have the, what city you're in. Right. So if you would please, Trinity, Faith, those are all ones that we see more than one of. And so if you would just put the name of your town or city, that would be very helpful.
So Trinity, Fayetteville, First Fort Smith. Okay, yeah, that'd be very helpful. Thank you. As you look at this, is your incorporated, name property, attach a list if needed, mark whether or not it has a trust clause or not. We did a big audit of that years ago. I will say, of course, the trust clause may or may not be on the deed. It is applicable either way by discipline, but we do ask that it be included in deeds. And so there's that information. And then who's the custodian? In other words, who's the person, or is they kept at a certain location for your legal papers? Please include the person, and please, if it's at First National Bank of Fort Smith or whatever, please write that in. And that's where they kept. Do you have a long-term plan for the maintenance? Yes or no? Have they been inspected for, fire and mold and all that? Yes or no? And then please write down what your plans for addressing these safety hazards. We have information on accessibility audit, and there's a link here on where to go to access that. And you can add that in. I'm going to show you, by the way, some more links at the end. And you can talk about accessibility issues. Second page of trustees, what your insurance company and coverage type. You may have several. You may have an umbrella policy, you may have workers' comp, all that kind of stuff. And then attach a copy of the insurance, not the whole policy, just the declarations page, which is usually 1 or 2 pages on the front. So just include that declarations page. If we ever thought that was useful in the past, we have discovered how important it is today. We've had to go back decades for this Boy Scout stuff on insurance policies. So please include all that, along with a list of any endowments, income producing, and permanent funds. So write all that down or attach as needed. And then, of course, we have signature page. Now we have 2 signature pages here, and I want you to note that safe gatherings policy, that has to be renewed every year and seen every year and signed off every year. It may not change, but you need to sign that. Then you reviewed it, revised it if necessary, and approved it. And it's been reapproved on an annual basis. And then include a copy. And then same thing, attach your insurance declaration. This is a reminder to attach those insurance declarations. The next page is the policy statement on misconduct of a sexual nature. This has been changed for this year. Now, we require it every year. I just wanted to say, be really clear that you cannot use last year's form. It has been changed. It's revised in June 22. So you can kind of see the whole history of here. All the time it's been updated. So there's information here and information from Clarity. This is a big part that's added. And notice it read by the people, including staff, adopted by the local churches, and signed by all staff and all volunteers and children, youth, and vulnerable adult ministry areas. But everyone who gets a paycheck, any kind of staff, should read and sign it. And you can print as many of these signature pages as you need, and different departments of the church if you need to. Please make sure every staff member, for example, they get a copy of it as well. They should have their own copy, and then you keep the master copy and all the signatures. Report of the Finance Committee. The report of the Finance Committee is here. Again, please put the whole name of your church. And then you just go through, what your regular reports of the giving, is the finance fulfilling its responsibility, all that information, just answer all these questions here. I'm seeing what about contract labor? Okay. On the sexual misconduct form, anybody who's a regular employee needs to sign it, especially if they're around others in your property. So now if it's contract labor, like coming to fix the plumbing, that would not be the case. But if it's people that's in your building regularly, they need to be, and they're getting a paycheck, they need to be signing that. Good question from Barry. Let's see, where are we? The handling of church funds. Okay. Does the treasurer make these reports? Will the church pay 100% of the conference tithe? If not, what's your plan? If not, you actually need to write a plan down there. And then what banks have been designated. See, another question. I'm guessing that's about the sexual misconduct. What about the preschool? Yep. Your preschool needs to fill that out. That misconduct form. Are the church offerings counted by unrelated individuals? And list the names. This is all for your safety as a church. If you kind of look through, these are all expectations that we have. W-2s, that's 1099s. Yep, that's a requirement. That's IRS right there. And then the finance chair signs it and affirms all the above is true. So that's the finance report. We do, again, have these signature pages, and that enables you to just attach your policies, and you have your signature page that you sign saying that it's been reviewed and revised, and here's the different. Okay, I'm getting a question, but it's not clear. No, okay. We'll go ahead and see if I can mute that. Okay. Let's see, moving on down. Culture of call. This page, we extract from the documentation and give to our Culture of Call ministry. We get to our Culture of Call ministry, and it is, you can tell, you put kind of age generation, have the person met with the pastor. This gives our Michelle a great list of folks to connect with and reach out to. So if those folks are on there, just know they may be reached out to as we're trying to help develop a new generation of clergy and lay leadership. And so that's all information for you. Now, this retired clergy to the charge conference, this is a disciplinary requirement that retired clergy who are members of a charge conference fill this out. They should be in contact with the senior pastor of the church and make it real clear where their charge conference membership is. That's all an expectation. Remember, retired clergy get a vote at the charge conference they're a member of. And so it's really important right now to make sure we're very clear where retired clergy's membership is held. Their charge conference membership is held. So for our retired elders and deacons, please note that. That, of course, does not apply if retired clergy are appointed to the church as a pastor. This is just for retirees who are not currently under appointment. The last form here is, I believe it's the last one, is the 200,000 more reasons report. It is, we take this, we extract it and give it to the 200,000 more reasons committee. And then they take that and work it and put all that into their own database. And that allows them, when we're thinking about grant money and where to put energy and put money and invest in different parts of our state, it gives us an idea of where to locate that and who is the primary contact. And that way we're not running that back to the district office or those ministries, those feeding ministries and ministries of family stabilization and literacy, they can go directly to the people who are doing that type of ministry in your local church and help resource those folks, give any kind of equipping, and maybe connect with them about grants. So that's what that right there is about. I believe this list was also used most recently because when we gathered up the list, when the foundation had some extra money and they wanted to do special grants, they called up 200,000 more reasons and said, hey, who's doing these kind of programs? And they were able to give them a list, and they were able to send them money, just $500 checks showing up in the mail. That's because those churches took the time to fill out this kind of form and say what kind of ministries they were doing around hunger relief and literacy and family stability. So that's all presented to them. The next one, if you have a certified lay servant or maybe a lay speaker at your church, every year they're going to need to fill out this certification paperwork and renewal. And there's information here that they'll fill out. And we get this form from Lay Servant Ministries. They gave it to us, and we just attach it to our charge conference set. And that's what it looks like, a little bit different this year. We're trying to provide a bit more tools there. And so those are given out. So that's okay. I just raced through a bunch of stuff in 40 minutes. I think we had some more questions. I'm gonna scroll. I'm gonna try to do it without giving y'all a headache here. back to the salary sheet, because I saw a few more questions pop up around that. And so let's pull up that salary sheet. Let me see. What if I want to change money for housing allowance? Okay, so let's talk about housing allowance and compensation first. First of all, housing allowance is set by the local church, not by the pastor. A pastor who has a housing allowance or a parsonage, there's another place that functions the same as a house allowance, and that is line 4. Okay, line 4. When in fact, if I'm on a housing allowance myself as a superintendent living in Fort Smith, we don't have a parsonage anymore, so we have a house allowance. So in my W-2 that I get from the conference office, it has a line for other benefits, and my housing allowance is made up of the amount in this line C plus line 4, and that equals my housing allowance that shows up on my W-2. Line C and line 4 are, by IRS standards, the same thing. So if you're a pastor and you want to move more money into housing, you can always grow line 4 in your total. Now, it may be that your church needs to rethink your housing allowance based on current market standards. For some churches, the housing allowance they had when I started in ministry over 20 years ago is the same number they use today, even though the market has changed dramatically in the past 20 years. And if that's the case, then that'd be a great conversation for the local church, the pastor to have, maybe talk with real estate people, they're friends of the church or members, and kind of figure out what is an appropriate housing allowance for our community in this moment in time. So that's a different question than a pastor wanting to move their line items around. So I just want to be clear that, you know, that's one way to approach that differently, is you can make line 4 your place for housing, and that includes you know, mortgage interest, stuff like that could go in there. So now I say, okay, this is where I say I'm not a tax person, so don't trust anything I say as legal advice or accounting advice. Another question that was asked: what is included in the cash allowance line? Okay, so cash allowance is number 3. That is paid directly to, that's just part of the pastor's comp. The pastor can put an amount in that, and it's not reimbursed. It's just part of their paycheck, but they're listing it in that. And then the pastor, then it's their responsibility as they file their taxes to do the correct IRS schedule paperwork to say these are personal business expenses. And so they define that themselves, and that's between them and the IRS. So it could be anything that falls under those kind of personal business expenses under IRS code, that if they would like to have part of their salary just internally do that. Some pastors, that's one of the issues with the account reimbursement plan versus line 3. Line D and line 3 are very different. For instance, line 3, if you're a full-time pastor, you get pension credit on line 3. You get 0 pension credit on line D. The account reimbursement, it is not included as part of your compensation for pension purposes or any other purposes. So that's one reason why folks often want to cast things in line 3. But you can put a lot of things there. Now, let's talk about account reimbursement plan. That's a different critter altogether. Accountable reimbursement plan is a part of the budget of the local church. And so it can be used for things like mileage. It can be used for, if you could get a computer off of it, but but if the pastor's moved, that computer belongs to the church, not the pastor. So it may have depreciated and whatever, but it belongs to the church. Anything purchased out of that belongs to the local church, not to the pastor. It's used by the pastor for work, but doesn't belong to the pastor. So D works very differently than many of us were told that it worked years ago. And if you have a lot more questions about that, your DS or your DA is happy to assist you about what that really means. But please know the received wisdom for account reimbursement. If you heard it like I did 20 years ago for the first time, what you were told is probably incorrect. And so you need to do a little more information gathering around that. Okay. I'm trying to see if I've missed any kind of question.
Yeah, Green Forest is asking a question about when we fill out the right column on the comp form, does that hinder them from getting a raise later on? And that does not hinder them from that.
No, the current versus the new. So the current explains where you are now. When I say now, it's this conference year that started, last month through June 30th. And then the 23 is what starts that new year, and it goes forth. You put the old and the new together, and then that tells us, was there a raise or not by having the two of them side by side.
But if a church decides they want to give a pastor a raise somewhere down the line, they can talk with you and ask for a charge conference to do that.
Yeah. If a church really doesn't know what its future looks like right now, and they don't feel comfortable doing a raise, that's fine. Then you can just move, make it the same. If it's $100, just put $100 in the next column, and that's that. And then you might get into the springtime and go, oh, okay, I think we're going to be okay here. We're looking real good. Call Blake, ask for a call charge conference. We want to set a new salary with a raise, or if we need to do a drop on the other hand too, we can do that for July 1st. Now here's the one thing I'll say. Here's what makes it a little iffy. We start appointments in January, and while salary is not the first thing we look at, it's not irrelevant to our work on the cabinet. And we have in front of us the July numbers, because we're making appointments that are effective July 1st. And so if we start getting down the road on an appointment, and then we find out, I don't know, in March that you want to drop your salary tremendously, that puts your church at a very much a disadvantage, because we're right in the middle of an appointment process, and now your salary is unpredictable. That's not helpful for your church or for the whole process. So my suggestion is do what you consider appropriate for your church that is sustainable. Figure that out and vote on it in the fall, and that'll be the number you ride with as we start the appointment process in January. That's my suggestion. Yeah, you can change it later, but we get to the point, you can get pretty far down the line. Also, it's not really fair if we have someone in place and we have an expectation around the salary, and the pastor does, and then to suddenly say, oh, I know we voted on this July, but we really don't want to do that. We want to drop it by half or something. And now we may have to find a new appointment for that pastor, because it may not be minimum or what. That's why you need to plan ahead. And that way we can have an appropriate appointment. We can have the right numbers before us, and that we are fair to everyone, both clergy and churches in the process, as we're trying to figure out doing our match and doing everything, in alignment that needs to happen. So my main suggestion is please do your research and have the best numbers that you research, that you feel comfortable with and is sustainable for your church. Okay.
I had one more question
Yes.
by text.
Uh-huh.
Someone is asking about signatures again on the copies.
Okay.
We have churches that are very small, and they handwrite these reports and get the signatures on their copies and then mailed to me, or scan and email. You can do anywhere from obtain them in writing on your forms to using your electronic signatures, whatever works best for you. As you know, we just need the signed copies.
Yeah. Thank you. And we've had to be pretty creative, especially with COVID in recent years. So if there's a real question about it, talk to your district superintendent or district administrator. We can help you problem solve that. The standard is a wet signature. Every time it says signature is a wet signature. But again, we are willing to have conversations if we need to do alternate path. But please work that out. Figure out to make sure whatever you do fulfills the expectations. Because some of these things have, kind of like legal force, like comp form. Once you approve it, that's the comp. And if something happens, your church still owes that all the way through the conference year. So, and it's been signed, and that's part of it. It's like a contract. So, similar to a contract. So, is there any other questions we have from the group? I'm gonna close out this, and I'm gonna show you one more thing before, and then, so this is the web page. This is, if I go to resources and forms, it takes you to this web page, and notice on charge conference forms, we have the packet itself, and that's what I just showed you. We also include some individual forms, because I know, for example, your lay servant, he's like, okay, you can just take that lay servant, download that one form, or email it, or send the link. Retired clergy, you can do the same thing. These are all different. These are all different individually separated out forms. They're all part of the packet, but we tried to make it easy for you just to grab and go on those. I'm sorry, I heard a question. So that's from the webpage there. Okay. Got a couple minutes left. Is there any final questions from the group?
We just got another one from Heather.
Yeah. What we got?
Can Blake explain more what he meant when he said that the number 3 counts towards pension and line D does not?
Right. Let me pull up again. Yeah. Comp form is always the complicated one. I know that. So when you look at a comp form, for full-time pastors, the church is responsible for a pension benefit of 14% of total comp. That's line 11 plus housing, and will be billed by the conference office. Now, this is full-time only. So part-time, this doesn't apply to y'all. But full-time, it's 14% of total comp, line 11. So anything here, note any of this section, 1 through 11 here, it counts as part of the pension billing of the 14%, plus, you see this, plus housing. And there's a special calculation for housing. So if there's a housing allowance, that's easy peasy. If it's a parsonage, there's a special calculation. There's directions on the back about it. I could tell you, but it would just confuse things. Notice neither one of those includes line D. So up to line 11, and then whatever the housing is figured in. Line D is not. Same with health insurance. It is not. So those aren't part of the pension billing. So you don't get 14% pension credit on anything in D or E there. Okay. I see another question. How do I handle classes for different years in simplified structure? Okay, Roger, I'm happy to answer that question separately, or you can come to next week's Zoom just on simplified structure and filling out that form. And that's where we're getting deep in the details of simplified structure and nominations form and how to structure those kind of teams. So you can call me. I'm happy to answer that question. I'm actually going to be talking to someone at 1:30 about that very thing today, or connect up next week, same bat time, same bat channel, and we'll do a session just on that. So good question. Okay. I think that's all of them, and we've hit the end of the hour. Is there any final word? Hey, we spent an hour talking about charge conference forms. Hey, thank you. God bless. And I want to thank you for just, caring enough to show up, to learn, get them done right. We are here to assist you in this. This is not the last time we're going to answer your questions. It's the first time. And so call your district office. They'll happy to walk you through. We want to make this as painless as possible. Want it to be helpful for you as you have these records for your church. But most of all, thank you for being leaders in your church and caring so much for your congregation and your community. May God bless you. and may you receive blessings as you offer them all week long. God bless. Bye.